Hello, and welcome to another wonderful interview on the Dancing with My Mother YouTube channel. My name is Sheree da Costa, and I am delighted to be your host. Now, before I go any further, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share too, because anything you do on your end helps me on my end, so to speak, to get my content out there to people who may find this interesting and or useful. Today, my special guest is someone so very dear to me words cannot describe. I'd like to introduce you to my oldest son, Tobias Atkins, who composed the song Self and Sacrifice, which featured in the first section of our beautiful award-winning short film called Dancing with My Mother. It was this particular song that inspired the creation of our film. Without that song, there would be no Dancing with My Mother. Of that, I'm quite certain. So without further ado, and rather than me rabbiting on and giving you Tobias's backstory, I'd rather he told you himself in his own words. So, hello, my beautiful son.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Pleasure. All right. Tobias, let's just kind of jump straight into it. And if I call you Toby, everyone, that's what we call him, but Tobias is the full name. So, Tobes, can you please tell, I just changed it again. Tobias, can you please tell us how your love for music began?
Well, I would say being born into a dancing family, musical theatre, ballet, dancing family, it was very quickly to fall in love with music from the jump. I can remember being backstage with the productions that you and Dad did. I was obsessed then at the age of like 2. And
Yes.
then I think that what kickstarted that even more was honestly like the music that we used to listen to in your car driving around has such a big influence on my life because the records that you played, Michael Jackson live, Chili Peppers, even stuff that I think, I look back and go, damn, my mom was like really freaking cool. Like, and even when I look back at the photos of you guys, like what you wore and everything, and you were listening to like really cool stuff, like even like Limp Bizkit and like Run DMC and
Oh,
all
yeah.
this stuff that I'm pretty convinced that no one else as a 2 to 10-year-old was really listening to in a car. So once musical theatre came through, then it was rock and roll and Michael Jackson, and then it was just off from there.
Yeah. And two, two artists spring to mind. One was Prince because of a certain moment in a hotel. There's a certain song, everybody, called You Sexy. So I won't say it out loud, but Toby was about 2.5, 3, and we went away for a weekend and we're in this very fancy hotel. And Toby's dad, David, had to take Tobias to the bathroom. And as he went through the foyer, he sang those lyrics at the top of his voice. So I'm sure they're still talking about us down there. Anyway, that was funny. But the other one was a certain guitarist with a band called Van Halen, and I think
Mm-hmm.
we all gave you heaps. Eddie Van Halen,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a big thing. But I'm jumping ahead a bit. So I know then that we started you at guitar, and you were doing the Suzuki method. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was in hindsight learning classical before really getting into rock or anything else is like I guess it's like dancing too, right? Like you see the dancers that learn um ballet and contemporary before they do jazz or hip hop or something kind of more modern, and that I mean, at least in my own perspective, they always look better.
Mm.
And I thankfully had an amazing teacher who made classical guitar really interesting,
Mm.
and I loved it. And then I got to play at the Opera House to complete the Suzuki course, which was amazing.
And you were the first Suzuki guitarist to play in the yearly concert for Suzuki at that level. I think maybe further up, but maybe you were the very, very first. I can't remember. But I do know your dad and I were absolutely so nervous, and you were just perfect. Yeah, it was beautiful, beautiful moment. So then, was it your idea or was it your our idea for you to start dance classes and stuff? I can't remember which came first, the chicken or the egg.
I think it was something that I wanted to do, and I was a little bit late in the game. Like I was maybe like 8 or something, or around that age that I kind of wanted to get into dancing. Because I think I did dance, then gymnastics, then back to dance. I can't remember what the order
That's
was,
right.
but
Yeah.
I remember kind of going between those two things, and I feel like it came from me just because I wanted to,
Mm.
as you get into your late teens, you kind of like remember stuff from when you're a bit younger and kind of revert back to that kind of thing. So I think yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I think you were younger than that, and I'll tell you why, because you were only 6 years old when you did the Anna Karenina season with
Oh,
the
of course. Yeah,
Australian
yeah,
Ballet.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so you must have been doing ballet and a bit of tap and a bit of whatever from the age of 6.
yeah,
But you're also doing the gymnastics as well.
mhm.
Yeah, we kept you pretty busy, I realize. So,
Yeah, there was lots of
yeah,
stop starts and sort of coming back to things, and I guess that's just being a kid, right? You just try stuff, and there's some kids that they learn classical piano from age 2, and then they're the next virtuoso. But as a lot of other kids do, I had that sort of tried this, tried that, came back to this, came back to that for the most
mm.
part. So which was great.
Yeah, and the dance is actually it's really giving you a bit of a background with your music.
Yeah,
We'll get onto that a bit later. But what was nice? Do you remember doing the season with the Australian Ballet of Anna Karenina? You played Anna
yeah.
Karenina's son. Do you remember with the
I
kite?
certainly do. Yeah, I have I have kind of my relationship with the opera house and that space, just like you spent so much time, would have spent so much time there back in the day.
Mm.
Was just like being a kid. I remember like it was, it's like the coolest venue, like one of the coolest venues in the world, and to be backstage and to be in and around costumes and other dancers and all that kind of stuff as a kid was like so cool. And I think I did, yeah, Anna Karenina before Suzuki, right? Um,
Yes, it would have been.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But I had that was like Disneyland for me because
Mm.
my role was very small, and I just had to run out with a kite, and I had to sleep in a bed, and I think I had
Yes.
one other
Yeah,
part in the show where I came out and was disciplined or something like that by my on stage parents.
that's right.
And I just have such great memories of doing all those things, and especially the sleeping in the bed part was probably the funniest part for me because you're sitting side stage in a prop bed, and then it
Yes.
gets wheeled out mechanically, and you're there, and when you're like, I can't remember how old I was, when 5 or 6 or whatever, but
Yeah.
you're pretending to sleep, but you also kind of trying to like see the audience, but like, oh, I gotta stay asleep, and the audience don't care because you're a kid. But yeah, I had such great memories of that, and that really, that energy of being, part of a production was like just etched into my memory forever.
And it was not something that I actually expected to happen for you. But it nearly didn't happen. On opening night, Toby was chosen to be the first cast of Anna Karenina's son. And he decided, I guess he was pretty excited. And he came home from school and he jumped off a ottoman onto the floor and twisted his foot and was limping around very noticeably. So I got in touch with the director, which was Maina Gilgood at the time. And I said, Maina, Toby's had a bit of an accident. Anyway, we got you to the opera house. I think I chugged you full of Panadol and hoped for the best. And you went out there and you stole the show. Yes, you were running around the stage with a limp, but it actually made it even cuter. And everybody was laughing. And Maina looked over at me because we were seated quite close to each other and gave me such a funny look, a good look, as
Yeah.
if to say, that's hilarious. And it worked out really well, and your foot got better. It was all good. But I really thought, oh no,
Oh god.
before he's even started.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell us about because you went to Brent Street, which at that time was run by the Howard sisters. And what a great job they did, just while we're on the subject.
Yes.
And a fantastic dance school, an all-round place. And you made a lot of friends there. And because of their connection with showbiz and musicals, you got the chance to audition for Oliver, a professional production. Tell us about that.
That was another just like a magical kid experience. I mean, I guess when you're like young enough doing those pro shows, you don't really have you don't feel the weight of the responsibility of the performance. You kind of kids, they just go out and they instinctively do things. And, so I just enjoyed every minute of that. That was like so much fun. And there was a big cast of kids too. I don't know how they managed so many kids in that show, and they did.
And several casts as well.
Yeah, two casts, I think, and then they had a few kind of extras that kind of like blended in and out of those casts when things went wrong. And I was one of those kids. I think I was the main kid that had the ability, or was given the responsibility to, if this kid falls sick or something happens, then you jump ship and you take that. I took that on full-heartedly, and I just that was so much fun. The sets, it was a Cameron Mackintosh production, and at that time things were obviously booming for them and for him, and they threw so much money at that. And the set was like these 2-story trucks, like multiple trucks, and and passageways underneath the stage, and just it was an absolute ball.
You had to come up through the floor or something, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and kids used to. Yeah, that's where we got the most in trouble, because it was at the end of the show, and the kids were kind of a little bit like, "How you going?" Because we had kids from the age of like 14 down to like 5, I think.
Yes.
So it was a big smorgasbord, and there was at least 10 to 12 of us, if not more. And yeah, we used to crawl under the stage, and there was these 3 little, and people used to fart and all this stuff underneath, and we would be sitting under the stage while the scene prior to us was going on. So we got in trouble lots of times, and kids put their lips through the grate, and like a fish, they could see these lips going up and down, and kids got in trouble a lot for the shenanigans that went in there. And
oh my God, so what a great experience. What was the name of your character again?
Whistler.
That's right, Whistler. Yeah. Wow. Well, another proud moment for Mum, I can tell you, and your dad as well. So in between schoolwork, you then ended up auditioning for Home&Away. So Toby actually played the role of Henry Hunter in the Hunter family for almost 2 years. And I think that was an amazing experience. This is when the almighty Chris Hemsworth was still in the show. So talk to us about Home&Away and the acting and how that felt. I've got lots of questions, but you go.
Again, I had there's two aspects to it for me. One was that I was 14. It was between the ages of 14 and 16. So you're kind of in that weird transition of kind of like becoming a young adult. Not really, but you're kind of like teetering on the edge of that. You're not really like a kid anymore. So I mean, but still, like all the other things prior to that, like the energy of going on set and experiencing the production, and like going on location, and the magnitude of what it was so cool. I loved all of that. Although I hated the sort of the attention that like Home&Away characters and actors and actresses got, and I wasn't really ready for that mentally. And when you're still at school, that was hard too. Missing a lot of school, and I felt I kind of got disenfranchised with school. Like there were times, and I've told you this now, but there would be times where they would drop me back to school, and I wouldn't go to school. I would go down to the kebab shop. And did, or maybe it's the first time I'm telling you. Anyway, I didn't know too much, but there were times where I was like, I'd missed like 4 days of school that week, and then I would not want to go to school because I just felt like I felt this kind of disconnection from it, and disconnection from my friends, and I would just go down to the kebab shop, and what's his name, Kevin. down at Kebab World. He still knows me.
You're
And
infamous.
still recognises me when I come down. So it was good. It was good and bad, and it was the final thing in that realm that kind of sort of burnt me out from that. And I didn't like,
Yeah.
when you're in year 10, you start going to a lot of parties and this and that, and you go to the shops, and I just didn't like the attention that I was getting.
No, some people would lap that up, but I always found that kind of refreshing, but also it surprised me. I remember being, I think it was somewhere like Warringah Mall or Westfield, one of the Westfields, and going down the escalator, and there were people coming up, and they're like, "That's Henry Hunter! Oh my God!" And you just wanted to jump off the escalator, and I thought, wow. Wow. A lot of kids would be like, yeah, that's me, but not you. Yeah.
No. It was also the role. Like the role, I was just like sort of this bully, bratty kid, and I don't really feel like I didn't feel like that offset or anything like that. So, I felt like more of a shy kind of like nice kid, and wasn't really like too bombastic or anything. So it affected me that people thought that that's who I like. Obviously that's what kids are going to think. They're going to think, oh, it's Henry Hunter. I'm sure, like Draco Malfoy, which is kind of a similar character.
Yes.
I'm sure he would have copped the same thing that I copped, where people think that you're that character, and that was really frustrating because you had to like explain to people who you actually are. You had to, win people over that you didn't really.
Yeah.
Like you didn't need to win them over, So
But
that
it felt like you did because you're a polite person.
nice, and I do care what people think of me, and so that kind of burnt me out eventually, and I ended up, I think it was about 18 months in. I think I went and walked up to it was a year and a half. I walked up to the producer of the show at the time. I said, yeah, I want out.
Yes, because it was like you had an option to go, or they had an option to let you go. Which is, like a lot of contracts. And I understood that because you were going into year 11 and 12 and you wanted to concentrate on your music, which is a lovely segue into going into Maze. And if at some point you could also touch on what the difference was between performing with something like Home&Away and Maze, because when you were on stage with Maze and then later on Glass Ocean, you were like electrifying. You just owned every place that you ever played at. So obviously there was a comfort in the music in some way, but I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Tell us about Maze.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think what to sort of revert back to Home&Away for a second, one of the things that environment dictates is that you are. I mean, as an actor, I realized that I never wanted to be an actor because I wasn't very good at sort of adopting something that wasn't something that I naturally were inclined to do or were interested in, or so to be a bully or whatever, I found it really difficult to say lines verbatim. I found that really difficult, not because I was like rebelling against it, but I just had a difficulty in trying to interpret those things as good as I thought they should be. But with when you're writing, if you're a writer or you're a musician and you're writing something that's for yourself, there's no bounds of you can make it the best thing. You can make it in line with who you are. And I think that was just the big difference with music and why I gravitated towards it, because there was nothing telling me that I needed to be like this or do that. I could just explore creativity for the joy of it, and that that naturally just brings out the best in people. So yeah.
No, that's really true. So when you went to your high school for year 11 and 12, you went to a different high school. How did you meet Nic Pettersen? James Armstrong was in the same school as you, but he was the bass player. But Nic Pettersen from Northlane fame, and if you don't know who Northlane is, that's fine because it's a particular kind of genre of music, but they are huge in that genre. And he's an incredible drummer. Anyway, so how did you meet Nic?
I met Nic through James. James had been at Pittwater High for 2 years before coming to Freshwater,
Mm-hmm.
and he was already in a band with Nic. And then that's how I met Nic. He just asked me to join the band, and
Right.
I got introduced to all the friends that I have now.
Yes, you've kept all of them. And what the genre of music that you were playing with Maze, it took a while for me to get my head around it, but what is that really growly rock?
Oh, I don't really know. To be honest, I don't actually have a good name for it. I mean, you put it under metalcore, I would say, as a
Yeah, but it
very
was
generic
better than
term.
that.
It was I don't know, progressive metalcore,
Yes.
uh, post-hardcore. There's there's so many niches of that genre. I honestly actually don't really know what
I think it's
it's in the heavy realm. Yeah,
progressive post metalcore sounds good to
yeah,
me.
that's probably accurate. Yeah,
Yeah, but I have to say with the growly stuff, which you didn't do, you did all the guitar work, and
yeah,
Nic was on the drums, and James did an amazing job of that.
very
Who
good.
knew that that voice was inside him? But it you have to kind of get used to it because it's quite. It sounds like devil music, basically. But the
Yes,
difference
yeah, yeah,
between Maze and what they call metalcore is that it had, I don't know, there was something symphonic about it, Toby. You know,
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I found. And then from Maze, you did a few EPs, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. I think we did like 3 releases altogether.
Yeah, I wish
Yeah,
I had them still. I don't know where they are, but from that you went on to Glass Ocean. Now, how did it go from Maze to Glass Ocean?
well, Nic, we toured with Northlane. Their drummer got kicked out. They loved Nic, understandably, and
Hmm.
they asked Nic to join Northlane, but Nic was still going to play in Maze.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, unfortunately, as the way things go, the beginning of the end for Maze.
Hmm.
And then when we finished Maze, we were all like about 20 years old, I think 21 maybe.
Hmm.
And then, like some of us are going to uni, some of us are having kids really early. Everyone kind of went off in their own direction. Nic's like now full time Northlane. And so we didn't have a band anymore, and we were just doing our own thing. And then obviously, you do your like finish uni, go travel overseas, spend 2 years overseas, which is what I did. And during that time, I loved Maze, but the one thing that kind of irked me was like I was like, are we ever going to sort of like adopt a more like a more mainstream sound that's not going to kind of like I feel like we could write distilled music that could still be what we want and not sacrifice who we are, but not scare people off at the same time. And that just never happened. So then when Maze finished, I had the opportunity to explore that side of things on my own, and then spent the next 3-4 years just like writing my own music on the side. I'd spent that time working for Dad as well and doing music for him and sound effects and all that sort of stuff. So I just had once again total creative control over what I wanted to do and just developed a sound. And it
Mm.
wasn't until I got home from living in the UK for 18 months that I really sort of put it into action.
Yes, and I want to jump back to the Eddie Van Halen thing because I'm not just saying this because I'm Toby's mum, everybody, but Toby, when he plays guitar, it's something else because he's a dancer as well. He embodies the music very much like how someone like Prince would, or someone who plays and vocalizes and all the rest of it, but in his own particular way. And going back to Eddie Van Halen, when Toby was probably 14, 15, something like that, maybe 16, he would have Eddie Van Halen on his computer and be playing sections of Eddie's solos, and then he'd stop it and then he'd try and get that solo. He would do this for hours. And it just goes to show you that the hours that are put in is what makes it look so effortless. So, in Glass Ocean, when he first started, you were lead guitar, you were everything guitarist, weren't you?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Besides the writing of the drums, I was everything.
Yes.
Guitar,
Yes.
bass,
Yes.
production engineer. Yeah.
You did everything. We're about to have a special guest. My youngest grandson is joining us. We might have to block his ears if we have any swear words. Is he coming up?
Very good.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there he is in the background, everybody. Yeah, so with Glass Ocean, it took a while. You did a few EPs and then you did the big LP, which was released in 2020. And that is an absolute masterpiece. Can you please say the name? Because I'll stuff it up.
The remnants of losing yourself in something else.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it really is an incredible album. So, Tobe, did you keep playing all the lead guitars and everything, or did you hand that over? The band just grew and grew, really, didn't it?
Yeah. I ended up still writing about 90% of it. And me and Kurt worked on a few things, and Pat worked on a few things, and they added some like really amazing bits to that album. But yeah, still more or less the same role of kind of doing most of the creative writing.
Yes, and obviously the lead vocals, and
Yeah.
so just when it's so funny, just when things were really looking amazing because of the album, it had been very successful, critically received beautifully, and you were about to go on a tour. This is in 2020. Where were you going to tour to overseas?
That was a tour of the States, and also a tour of Europe. It was both of those were being talked about at the same time.
Yes, and well, guys, when we say tour, any band starting out on the international stage, as these guys were, it's not flying in your own plane or all that sort of stuff. It's really in vans and buses, and it's rough. But that's what you have to do, and that's what you did when you were touring around Australia, correct?
Yeah. And Nic's. There's no one more that I know that's more road ready than that guy. They might be touring fairly nicely now, but they spent. Australia too is a rough place to tour because you got to drive. We only got like 5 capital cities, and you got to drive between most of them until you can fly. But it's rough.
Yes.
So yeah.
And you guys were doing your own setup and stuff, although
Yeah.
knowing you would prefer to do that because you're a complete control of,
A little bit.
Yes. Yeah. I think I'm very much the same. I could have 3 assistants, not that I do.
Yeah.
But before a performance, I'd actually rather do it myself, even if it's more work.
Yeah.
So then COVID happens. And what happened with the band at that point?
The band kind of just went into just like I don't know, just wait and see mode, really. Which is, I think everyone did that.
Yes.
We were trying to get the album out. We still managed to do a bunch of music videos in a very guerrilla kind of way. And probably broke a few laws, if I'm being honest.
I was there at a few of them.
Yes. So yeah, we kind of just were waiting. We were doing a lot of admin and signing, contracts with our first record label and that kind of thing. And just a lot of waiting around. We didn't get to play any shows, so yeah.
No, it was a strange time. So many things, and I guess the timing. Let's forget about what happened with children and everything else, but the timing was incredibly unfortunate for a lot of people, your brother included, because he was going to go do his time overseas.
Yeah.
But for, Glass Ocean, I just went, you wouldn't read about it because the album was doing really, really well and still is, still being streamed everywhere. So one of those songs on the Glass Ocean LP was called Self and Sacrifice. And when I first heard that song, I was immediately struck, and Joey was still with us at this time, how it felt like you were singing that about him and I. But when you wrote it, What did it mean to you? Where did that come from?
The album was a lot of the sort of the theme of the album was about resisting putting the right things on the sacrificial flames that would burn off, that would then give you the freedom and the future that you would desire, instead of staying trapped in a certain mindset, and chasing the wrong ones too, and just trying to like work through that, and parts of that album is about being trapped and not knowing how to escape from it, and then there are other parts where they're like more revelatory moments. For moments, there's never really like a ta-da moment in the album at all, but there are moments where there seems to like that I at least perceive it this way, as a more honest reflections and more truthful anecdotes come forward, even for a moment. So that's why that song is one of those moments where I feel like it's like a real honest reflection about what works, what needs to be done, and using the analogy of a mother, in the sense of like an actual mother like yourself, or like the earth as a mother, nature as a woman, talking about, a sort of like a chaos and order kind of interplay, and that the sacrifice of a mother, something which I now understand a lot more than I did then when I wrote it, is like, a woman that becomes a mother sacrifices herself, sacrifices her life, for the betterment of the future, not maybe not even her future, but the future of things that are outside of her, which could be her children, and that a woman also sacrifices her child to the world in the hopes that they will do some good and go out there and make the world a better place. And the scary thing is, to actually let go of your child into the world is so hard to do. And there's also a part of the sacrifice is that it might not work out and it might not go the way that they intended, but without making that sacrifice, they'll never know. There will always be this thing. And I think, especially with Joe and his life, I think there was parts of you that had to do that at times, and it would have been so scary knowing that you don't know what was going to happen, but you had to hope for the best and you had to make a sacrifice, and you can't always cover things in cotton wool. You have to take risk, so that's kind of what that song was about. And it's oddly, it fit in with what you guys were doing so well. And there's just so many layers of meaning to it. Inside our family, and hopefully for other people too. So yeah.
So can you just talk to us now? We've mentioned Joey. Describe to us in your own words, Joey.
Joe was a comedian, quite fearless.
Yeah, too much.
Too much. Love to be loved.
Yeah.
Could light up a room. Was the most interesting person to talk to. Courageous, fearless, very funny, very creative, and would, to his detriment, at times, would open his heart to anybody who gave him an inkling of respect, kindness, admiration. He would unlock all the doors for whoever, and that's why people loved him, and he had quite a reputation for all those things. I think he was very much himself and wasn't afraid to be himself, which was a little bit of a distinction between I was kind of a little bit too people pleaser and kind of afraid of what people would think of me, and he kind of just didn't care.
No.
But would show respect when respect was given, and kindness and when kindness was given, but also the other side of that too. He would also, if he was wronged or felt, you know, um, forsaken or whatever by somebody, he would do the same. So
Yes.
he was quite a mirror to everything exterior.
I think that's a great way to put it. He was quite a mirror to everything exterior.
Yeah.
I need to write that down. That's fantastic. So do you have any particular favorite Joey memories?
Yeah, I kind of just reflecting on what I was saying about the difference between us and what people thought and what people didn't think, and I would, there's people out there that, like, if you get cut off in traffic or something happens to you, and you might hold it in and you might regret not speaking the truth about something or your own version of the truth then and there. But Joey just didn't have that filter. He would say what he thought in the moment. And that was, like, I always admired that about him, because it seems like it's kind of a freedom that I still to this day can't really get there. And I love that about him. And this is going to be an example that's a little bit, it might come off a little bit rude and a little bit like, how you going? But I think it's just a really great example. We went to the movies with you and Pete. We went to, like, one of those nice cinemas where you get, like, the a la carte. You can have bloody lobster brisket and a glass of Chardonnay with your while you're
Yes.
watching Transformers or something.
Yes.
We went to somewhere in the city, I think, for that, and we were watching a movie there. And I remember we were in line to get a drink at the bar, me and Joe, and this woman just cuts through right, like, absolutely as ruthlessly as of a cut in a line as you could. It was no one around us, and this woman just goes, literally just sort of like sidesteps in front of Joe and takes his spot, and and it's just like, without any hesitation, he just goes, "Fuck you." And she turned around, like, so shocked that someone had the balls to call her out, and she, like, literally kind of like went like this and then just kind of walked off. And I was just like, oh man, that's just like freedom right there to just express yourself. And she, I mean, as far as we were concerned, she'd done something, she just walked all over us, and he just called her out on it. And it's just one of these memories of Joe that it's not really like, there's probably way better. There is way better memories and more,
Yeah.
maybe better stories and stuff, but it's just one of those ones that stick out in my head that I'm like, that's living. It's like you just live in the truth, in the moment. You're not afraid to say what you think.
Yeah. No, I agree. And those little moments that come out of nowhere, I know that occasionally he and I would go to Aldi together, do the grocery shopping for him, and then we'd go and have a sushi at the sushi bar. And I'd have all these things I need to tell him to get him to do so he'd be organized, because he was floundering on and off. And then he'd say something so funny that I was crying with laughter. And that was just, yeah, the fuck you is just, I love it. I can hear him saying it. And I wasn't even there. I mean, I was in the theater, but yeah. So post all of the COVID thing and all that, you are now in another phase of your life with your beautiful wife, Christy, my gorgeous daughter-in-law, and 2 babies and another on the way. And then after Glass Ocean, you started an e-commerce venture, which went for like 4 years, right?
Yeah, 4.5, I think. Yeah, 4.5,
Yeah.
5 years in change. Yeah,
Yeah. And that was called,
the Furry Nomad.
yeah, which you've now wound up because you're going on to other things. But
Yeah.
I think that just goes to show how clever Tobias really is, to go from all that music, all those years of music, then to do a U-turn because of family and all the rest of it, and start an e-commerce business. And I really mean from scratch. And to build it up like that was just astounding. And the problem with e-commerce, as any of you out there would know, is that it's very competitive. So Toby would come up with beautiful ideas for doggy harnesses and leads and colors and everything else. And 2 months later, everyone's doing the same thing as him. Correct, Tobes?
Yeah. It's just it just depends on the market conditions and what's going on in the economy. And obviously, there was a time during COVID, post COVID, when the market was really hot.
Yes.
And then when it starts to slow down, and also, I could go on and on, but when you've got big competitors coming into the space, and they can push you out quite easily, depending on what you're doing. So we kind of experienced all those kinds of things at once. And while things were still going pretty well, we decided to sort of just wrap it up and close it down while things were good.
Yes, it was very, very hands-on. Even I was in the warehouse at times.
Yes,
So.
thanks, Mum. Yeah, yeah, Mum. For people listening, my mum came and did orders at the warehouse. Well, it's a storage facility, in the back of a warehouse, once or twice a week, and it was a godsend.
I had to learn a whole set of skills like this, like the YouTube channel, but it's good for the brain, for the aging brain. So my last question about you is, do you see yourself as returning to music one day? And if so, in what role, what capacity?
I love that you love that album, but I will go on record and say that I actually, most of that album I don't really like. I'm actually not that big of a fan of it, and that is because, and something we kind of touched on very briefly, is that when things take too long to do, and if you're doing them for kind of the wrong reasons, it's not going to be the best work. And not that I wasn't doing it really for the wrong reasons, but when music became too business focused for me, and it became more about like, can we get access to do this tour, and can we get on this podcast, and can we do this playlist on Spotify, and can we go on this radio station? Like, I kind of like was forcing the issue, and realized that I'd lost the spark for it. And that was kind of happening like halfway through writing the album.
Okay.
So I say all that to say that I would love to get back into music one day, but I don't want or expect anyone to pay me for it. I would like to do it really so that no one really listens. Like, it's like, if people hear some of it, that'd be great. But really, I would just like to be, 40 to 50 years old and have time up my sleeve so that I could be writing music just for my own thing. I just want to be in a basement somewhere writing this weird stuff, and that's kind of like, to be honest, my whole life is, I think some people think that my kind of career shift away from music kind of seems odd, and not, I think some people, including some of my friends, don't really understand it. But like, the reality is my whole life is kind of like a return to that kind of stuff, to creativity and all that kind of stuff. So, to answer your question, yes, definitely one day. But for now, all the guitars are locked away, gears packed up, most of it sold. And when I feel that things are taken care of, and I have, and been responsible enough as a family man, that's probably the time when I'll pick up the guitar again and just have fun with it.
And do it, as you said, for yourself. And I think any good creativity has to be for yourself.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean when it becomes, I don't know, the business side of things. It's very tough, especially the music industry. So, all right. Yeah. Well, look, I think that is amazing. Tobias, thank you so much for taking the time today to chat with your very proud mum.
Thanks, Mum.
I think it's really, really rare to have a mother-son interview, and I'm really quite chuffed that you and I got to do this together.
It was very cool. Very cool.
It's so cool. And it'll live forever. Oops. For our viewers, if you'd like to see some more of Glass Ocean's amazing music videos, I'll post the links in the show notes. If you'd like to stream their music, you will find Glass Ocean on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and pretty much any other music streaming services. And I will also post the lyrics to Self and Sacrifice in the show notes, because they're as beautiful to read as they are to hear. Thank you for your interest. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share. This means so much to me and helps me spread more awareness on subjects such as HPPD and mental health, but other things as well, like the music, because that is what drives me and it's what drives most of us who are creative in the performing arts. Tobias, thank you again. My beautiful son, you've made your mum very, very happy.
Thanks, Mum. Couldn't have done it without you.
Okay, that's it. So from the both of us, be safe. Until next time, bye for now.